sat down like any other day just to simply have dinner when they're out with their family. However, being black and being out here and having dinner is not safe enough for them because of what happened next. Apparently there was a hit and run accident that happened out here, and instead of police officers, like they should, asking questions, taking a breath, doing something, and I'll explain why in a minute, rushed into Applebee's, asked, apparently or allegedly asked, hey, is there any black family in here with a baby or whatever? And somebody points like this, run over and start harassing, start grabbing, and worst of all, to baby Takaris, start pepper spraying and tackling the dad who's holding him and banging his head against the shelf. How this could ever happen. One of the responses of the Kenosha Police Department and the officers involved, allegedly, is that I accidentally pepper sprayed. We all know from what happened in Minnesota when somebody accidentally grabs a gun instead of a taser. This was no accident. If this officer reached down and unlocked a pepper spray, that was an accident. Took it out into his hand by accident, put his finger on the trigger by accident, and then sprayed in a confined space by accident. All of which violate every policy and procedure of the police department around the country. You are never to use pepper spray in a confined space at all, because one, you can infect everybody around, and two, around children or innocent victims, should never happen, ever. What happened next is even worse, because you have numerous officers, I couldn't even count, looking, 6 at least that I could count, standing around with nobody else in the restaurant, no threat they're going to leave, start to get aggressive without asking questions. What is the first thing that officers are taught? To de-escalate a situation, come on in, find out what's going on. This is an investigation that they're doing regarding an accident. This isn't a murder. This is about a hit and run accident that's going on outside. What should you ask? Can I have your identification? Were you involved in an accident? How long have you been here? Ask the people at Applebee's. How long have they been here? They would have found out that they had been there for a long time, well before this accident ever happened. All you had to do was ask a few questions that would take, what, 10 seconds, 30 seconds to avoid any of this happening. But no, Kenosha and Pleasant Prairie as their sidekick have a history that they act first and ask questions later, especially if you're the wrong color. And this has been a pattern that they've done. They come out, they get aggressive, they beat, and then they ask questions later. Simply being black and having to go to dinner is not a crime. And then on top of it, to throw salt on the wounds, they decide in the next step to start charging these parents with resisting arrest and obstruction of the police officers when the actual people were hiding in the bathroom. Hiding in the bathroom. If they would have waited the 10 seconds, because all the dad wanted to do was go change the baby who was crying, and one police officer says, that's fine, go ahead and change him, and the other police officer is grabbing him around the neck because he thinks he's leaving. All they had to do was wait the 10 seconds and follow him into the bathroom, and they would have uncovered the people that committed the crime. None of this had to happen. Applebee's, who also takes a part in this, why are you singling out people? Why aren't you saying, hold the phone, these people have been in here, let's talk to their server? They couldn't have done this. Why would they rush to judgment and start pointing when they just say, hey, where's a black family that was involved in it? Oh, there's a black family, because they were the only ones in the restaurant. So they got singled out because of the color of their skin. And then what happens? Applebee's, from the corporate level, says, you know what? People who were really concerned from Applebee's, some of the managers, were filming what was going on because they knew of the travesty that was happening. They end up getting fired. The people that are trying to expose the problem, the manager ends up getting fired. This is pouring, again, Applebee's, salt on the wound. Applebee's like salt on their food. They like to put salt on the wounds. Why is this going on? It is unfair up here in Kenosha. It is unfair to the people who live here that they portray a message that says everybody's welcome when everybody is not welcome. And this is a tragedy that has now just been escalated and is compounding. When I'm here today to really talk about Takaris, this baby, who is an innocent victim, who could have been shot. If this officer's saying that it was an accident to pull out the pepper spray, maybe it was an accident to pull out a gun. Maybe it was an accident to do something else that could have been, this tragedy could have been much worse. But it's bad enough when a baby ends up in the hospital in this situation where nothing like this ever need to occur. This is a complete violation. It is a system breakdown. It shows the lack of training by Kenosha, Pleasant Prairie. How did these other officers sit by and stand and watch this happen when it was completely unnecessary when they're in the restaurant? We are going to take steps. Rainbow Push has stepped up to come in on this particular case to bring national attention to this problem, and you're going to hear from Bishop Grant. You're going to hear from Grandma, who's really concerned about her family and really concerned about her grandchild related to all this. But the real point is we need to expose the problems that are going on up here, and we need to get them to take action. Why hasn't this officer been let go from the force? The last officer that accidentally pulled out a weapon and shot somebody saying it was an accident was fired and is prosecuted. This officer, as far as I know, has not even been disciplined for anything related to this. We are calling to action for Kenosha, Pleasant Prairie, and Applebee's, and we'll take our next steps if that isn't happening. Bishop Grant.
I'm Bishop Tavis Grant, Tavis Grant, the Acting National Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition. I want to thank this family for enlisting and inviting us to fight on their behalf. What happened at this Applebee's is unconscionable for any family, particularly a black family. Over and over again, we are profiled driving while black, jogging while black, now having dinner while black. This coming weekend, we will culminate almost 6 decades of fighting for equal protection under the law at the March on Washington in Washington, D.C. Reverend Jackson and I watched the video from what happened on that horrific evening, and it is gut-wrenching. It is immoral, and we believe it's illegal, and the necessary parties should be held accountable. This mother and father and child came to this establishment for one reason, and that is to have dinner, as families do every night across this country. To have this one-year-old child endure this trauma and horrific, aggressive, excessive use of force. This family did nothing wrong that night. They were in the right place at the right time for the right reason. And yet the wrong thing happened to them and to this one-year-old child. Imagine, if you will, Shania watching her child inhale the fumes that were dispersed by this police officer, this supposedly trained police officer, using pepper spray in an enclosed environment. We know very well what has happened in Kenosha. We know what happened to Crystal Kaiser. We know what happened to Jacob Blake. We saw the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. And we cannot but wonder who is investigating this matter and what degree of transparency is being applied. Applebee's simply giving a marginal apology, dismissing a staff member, which is questionable, meeting with staff and teams members is not enough. They need to sit down with this family. They need to look at them eye to eye. We saw this in Disneyland 3 years ago with some young African-American children at an amusement park. What do you have to do? And how do you have to do it to get equal protection under the law, and equally so receive the necessary equity and inclusion as it relates to response from corporate America? And so we put out, Reverend Jackson has put out an appeal to meet with the heads of Applebee's on behalf of Jamel and Shania and this family, and on behalf of this community, because we're questioning whether or not this is a place for the neighborhood in any Applebee's across the country. It has always been our mode of operandi. Our methodology is conversation, negotiation, but then there's demonstration. And the longer Applebee's turns a blind eye and deaf ear to the cries and calls of this family to sit down with them, the stronger it will come from the community. That maybe we need to not only boycott here in Kenosha, but we may have to boycott all over the country, because we are tired of having families endure this. Imagine, if you will, the respiratory challenges this child may have, the cognitive challenges this child may have, and the father and mother, the anxiety, the fear, the apprehension that if this is not handled the right way, it can happen again. It must stop now. It must stop here. And very simply, we have had enough. And so we have made demands on both the city of Kenosha. This officer should be on administrative leave and or terminated. And the necessary individuals, 6 or more officers, all of them should be held accountable. The commanding officer should be held accountable. The process and procedure must be looked at, that no family, regardless of their color, would endure this type of malfeasance and mistreatment from law enforcement and any other agency anywhere. We want justice, and we want justice now. We are asking those of you that have had these experiences to continue to reach out to our offices and our various platforms, because this doesn't stop in Kenosha. We will not stop. We will not rest until we get justice for this family.
Boyd, B-O-Y-D, Shania's mother, the grandmother of the baby, and it's hurtful to get a call and I hear my daughter screaming in the back, help the baby, where's her baby? And my grandson, he was born premature. Needs to develop more. It could be other problems. We never know, like later on down the line. It's wrong that they was biracial. They was racial profile as being black for something they didn't do. I don't wish this on no one, or no one's other family, black, white, any other color. It's not right what happened to them. We just ask for justice for all of them. And also, if they committed a crime, they have to do time. So a crime was committed, and it wasn't them. It was a crime against the police. It was the police against them. And we would like for something to be done in the processing of what happened to them. Because if it happened to the police, it would be something done. So what's going to be done and it happened to them?
Now we have other leaders who are here. Tanya McClain of Leaders of Kenosha and Clyde McLemore of the Lake County Black Lives Matter. Pastors and stakeholders and community leaders have joined Rainbow Push, and Rainbow Push has joined them. This is a collective and a collaborative, a coalition of you, if you will, of leaders and faith leaders and activists who've been working a very long time together to ensure that families like this get the kind of grassroots support that they need, grassroots assistance that they need, and the resources that are related to it. We want to make sure that this child receives the necessary health care, this family receives the necessary mental health care services. There was a recent study that revealed that 1.6 million black people have lost their lives because of racism in America in the past 22 years. It's incidents like this that creates angst and anger and resentment and long-term pain that families need the necessary wraparound mental health services and resources to help them cope with living while black. That's what happened here at this Applebee's. Living while black. And no one, regardless of their color, no one, regardless of their skin tone, should have endured what this family has endured. Someone must answer, someone must be held accountable, and we want justice for this family.
We held a press conference a couple of weeks ago demanding transparency from Kenosha Police Department, demanding that body cam footage is released immediately. We want full transparency. Today is the 3rd anniversary when Jacob Blake was shot viciously 7 times in the back by Officer Rustin Shesky. So clearly, not much has changed in the last 3 years. It's just unfortunate that we're here before you again with another young African-American family whose child witnessed their parents harmed, as Jacob's children witnessed him shot in the back 7 times. This has to stop. So we're working together to finally bring some resolve. We're asking for our elected officials, from the governor on down, the Attorney General call. We need you to speak out. We need you to say something. You know what's happening in Kenosha, and your silence is complicit, and we're not standing for that. So we're going to do all that we can with all the resources that we have locally and nationally to bring justice to this family and to bring justice to this community, because the question needs to be asked: are you safe in this community as a black or brown person? And right now, I don't feel safe, and it doesn't appear that we're safe here.
We've been asking for quite some time for, as Clyde McLemore gets ready to come, we've been asking for quite some time, as this is the anniversary of Jacob Blake's shooting, for this police department, the sheriff's department in this county to be investigated for pattern and practice. We know the pattern and practice. It is almost as if there is a triangle between Kenosha, Racine, and Wauwatosa. A triangle where if you are black and brown and you encounter law enforcement, the results could be horrific and life-ending. And once again, we'll be appealing to the Department of Justice. It's important that the Attorney General now, for a 1-year-old child to hear the call of this community asking for an independent investigation into these matters. This child is 1 year old on the anniversary of Jacob Blake. And imagine the stories will be told the rest of his life. Imagine the trauma that he'll go through in his family for the rest of his life, knowing that this incident occurred to him. Those of us who have had these things happen to us, being pulled over, being harassed, those of us who have had this happen to us, called the N-word, or received some form of discrimination as such, we live with these bruises and scars for the rest of our lives. We must now make Kenosha the place where change takes place and people can be made whole. Clyde McLemore.
Clyde McLemore, C-L-Y-D-E-M-C, capital L-E-M-O-R-E. I'm a regional director for Black Lives Matter. I'm stationed out of Waukegan. Live in Zion, where this family is from. Not only are we calling for justice for this family, we also calling for the state's attorney here in Kenosha to drop all charges against the father. He was not the person to have that accident. He shouldn't have been charged with anything. And we asking that the city and the state of the city of Kenosha drop all charges against the father of this baby immediately.
And the mother.
And the mother. Oh, the mother got you. And the mother.
And the mother.
We want charges against both of them dropped. Thank you.
There is no question that this involved a racial issue. But I'm going to appeal to everybody else, okay? Because if your child was in your arms and your child got pepper sprayed, I don't care if you're black, white, brown, how would you feel if you knew your child's head was banged against the cabinet unnecessarily, your child got pepper sprayed, your child who's barely over 1 year old, and you don't know the future consequences because police officers overreacted to a situation? This doesn't have to be a black and brown issue. This is a people issue. It is a black and brown issue here, but it doesn't need to be, because this is people are people and should be treated with respect. And the problem we have in Kenosha, which is a lot of the problems we're seeing around the country, is the lack of respect. When this happened to this poor family, I was on trial up in Minnesota against police officers who killed a man, where the jury came back and decided that they were liable for their actions in this particular case. Meanwhile, I'm hearing from this family at the same time what's going on back down here, not only a couple hours away. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy, and I've warned people in other counties, in Waukegan, I've warned them in other states, when you see patterns of officers like this, they're gonna kill somebody. The accident that happened with pepper spray, the next accident will be a gun. I'm warning Kenosha, I'm warning this group. Not that it hasn't happened in the past, but it's gonna happen again in the future if they don't take action now.
Questions?
Have you seen police reports and body camera video of this incident besides the cell phone video we've seen circulating?
They haven't turned them over, but we can tell from the actual cell phone video. You can see on their chest only the green is where they're actually filming. And as far as I could see, I only saw one body cam that looked like it was lit up. Several others were red, indicating that they weren't on. But no, the city has not. I've just gotten involved. The city is saying it's under investigation. I have a long history here. They will tell you it's under investigation, and they won't turn anything over for 6 months because they want to sweep it all under the rug. Because of the pending case that they have against them, I'm advising them not to do that.
So by pending case, do you...
They feel terrible. The anxiety that they're feeling just from being here at the Applebee's, you can see it on their face. It brings them back. I had to literally lure them from the car. The feelings that they had, they were literally shaking. And I just don't want to make their injuries worse or their trauma worse related to trying to put
We've had to surround them with communities. We've had to surround them. We've had to surround them with community support and resources. Leaders of Kenosha have been effective in making that available. We know they need wraparound mental health services. The trauma for a mother and her 1-year-old child, just the visuals of it, to hear the baby crying and gasping, the officers using excessive, aggressive physical force while the father has the child in his arms, has been horrific for them to even repeat, let alone have it replayed over and over again. This is the kind of trauma that a gift certificate is not sufficient. An email apology is not sufficient. These families deserve more, and we're going to fight for them to get more.
Has Applebee's, the county of Kenosha, or the city of Kenosha reached out to anybody?
It has been deafening and disrespectful that this family has not heard from the mayor. It's never heard from the political leadership.
County executive.
Has not heard officially from the heads of Applebee's. It is absolutely unconscionable. How could this happen, regardless of what side you're on? There's a 1-year-old child that was pepper sprayed in your establishment, and you've not reached out to this family. The executive of this county, this city, has not reached out to this family to say, oh my gosh, is there a need? Is there something we can do? Is there some service we can provide? I know you live in another state, in another city, but it happened here. What can we do as a community? And thanks to the good-hearted, well-intended people of Kenosha who have reached out and want to make sure that they provide what they can for this family while they need it, because that's the right thing to do at the right time.
Are you calling for a boycott of the restaurant?
I am saying that if Applebee's does not hurry up, and they are on the clock, and respond to the call of this family at the behest of Reverend Jesse Jackson, this is what we've done in times past. Our methodology is conversation and discussion. That is not facilitated We have no choice. This is what this weekend is all about. Thousands of Americans will converge on the Washington Mall on Saturday and act out what Dr. King led at that time. A place where his children, these are his words, his children. Well, he was speaking of Shania and Jamel's children as well. And it's up to Applebee's to do what they think is in their best interest. We know that when we do sit down and we do deliberate and have meaningful conversations, healing can begin. This family is asking for that, and that's not unreasonable.
So then I'm assuming you are going to file a lawsuit at some point. Can you establish the timeline, or basically waiting to see whatever other responses you get from Applebee's?
I would hope that the department takes the right action. I would hope that we can have a discussion to have the right actions taken without the necessary of a lawsuit. I want them to turn over all the evidence. I'm never quick to file on anything until I have all the evidence, because I believe that justice should work in that manner, unlike the police did to them that evening of charging them and attacking them without having evidence. I don't want to be accused of doing the same thing, so I'm going to wait till I have the appropriate evidence to bring the appropriate case. But the evidence seems overwhelming just from the little bit we have. There is no question there was a violation of the civil rights of this baby, for one, who's an innocent victim. Irrespective of the two family, the mom and dad, we have an innocent victim here who was attacked for no reason. So there's no question whether the city wants to talk about taking action without a lawsuit. I welcome that, because there needs to be changes and there needs to be meaningful reform here, and I'm open to volunteering my time to help them.
Are you grateful the video came out? I mean, it's hard to watch, and I'm sure that it's hard for them to relive it if they see it again. Are you happy the video has been spread across social media?
Absolutely. This is our modern times. As you all know, many of these things don't come to light because people didn't have cameras in the past. Now, because of cameras, because of people filming, this has come to light. And what was the response of Applebee's management? They were punishing the manager for having people film this tragedy that's going on in their restaurant because they didn't want evidence of it. I don't know what their relationship is with the police department. I don't know how often they eat here or how they're protected. I don't know what that little situation is going on, but clearly they're trying to protect the police officers and not protect the
One of the greatest witnesses we have right now, fighting racism, fighting police aggression, is cell phone video. One of the greatest witnesses. I was several weeks ago with the family of Ahmaud Arbery. Video is how those officers got convicted. 6 police officers who happen to be white in Mississippi. Video contributed to that. George Floyd, Raquel Boyd, Laquan McDonald. The list goes on and on. Malcolm James. Video here in Kenosha. Seeing Jacob Blake shot several times in the back, cell phone video. So how is their first response to this? The first response to this is to fire the person who really had no responsibility for citizens and or customers exercising their First Amendment right. And so we question that, but we are indeed thankful for the benefit, for not for us, for this family to then establish their innocence and the injustice that they have endured.
Kevin, based on earlier comments, it appears that those charges against mom and dad are still in place right now. What's your next step to try and get those dropped?
I'm not a criminal lawyer. That's not my part of it. They have representation. I can't imagine that any reasonable city, if they looked at all the evidence in this case, would continue to prosecute this poor innocent family. But I've seen worse, and I've seen it out of Kenosha, and I hope they're really making an effort to make a change here and to show that they're really taking a different step and not really saying, because every time there is not video, officers, what they do when they commit a bad act, when they use excessive force on somebody, they charge the people, and they charge them with obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, all of which should have never happened to begin with. But they say, well, they resisted, they did this. And the reason they do that is to cover their own tracks. This needs to stop. In most counties and in most other states, the municipalities have passed laws that says you cannot charge somebody with resisting arrest unless there's an underlying crime. Unless you have a crime you're accusing him for, you can't charge him with resisting because of this exact thing. But Kenosha hasn't filed suit to have that be happening.
The other side of the coin, they're saying at the DA's office that your clients resisted arrest when the police had probable cause to detain them to investigate. What do you usually tell your clients that are told to stop and answer questions or stop you being detained? Do you tell them to resist arrest or?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So you're saying that people who are eating dinner are resisting arrest. Where are they going? There's 6 police officers surrounding them. Tell me how they're resisting arrest. Arrest for what? What were they being arrested for? When you're being stopped and asked a question, what are you doing? I'm having dinner. How long does it take for that officer to walk over and say, waitress, how long have they been here? You know, is the police just have carte blanche to pick you off the street, and start throwing you to the ground and beating you? If that's okay with you, you have that attitude. That's not okay with me, and I don't think it's okay with our civil justice system.
What was your reaction when you got that phone call? Was your daughter in the Applebee's making that emergency phone call to you, and what was going through your head?
Actually, one of the waitresses had called me, and I hear my daughter screaming in the background, "Mom, help! Help! My baby! Where my baby? My baby! Mom, help my baby!" When I get to the scene, they gave me 5 different lies. First, they said that my daughter and her baby daddy was in there fighting. All right. Then they said they was investigating a scene. So I'm like, "Where are you investigating?" And they said to hit and run. I was like, "Hit and run? Her car is right here." So the whole time my car was in the parking lot, they said that her and the baby and her baby daddy ran from the scene. They never ran from the scene. It was never at the scene. The people was in the bathroom. Kind of found out the baby. It was never a baby. One of the kids couldn't walk, so they was carrying one of the kids from the scene of the accident.
When you saw the video, what was your reaction?
I was hurt. The way that they did my grandson and my son-in-law. That was not justice. It was not justified. It was wrong. They shouldn't have done it. They could have asked a little more questions before they resolved what they did. Maybe they could have asked to see the camera when they walked in.
That's right.
Would have helped.
That's right.
That would have helped a lot. They would have saw the other people running in at the same time. But they're not telling the whole truth. Then they also called CPS. CPS wouldn't let me get the baby because I'm not a Kenosha resident. So I had to call who was here, which is the godfather, which is my nephew. He's a resident of Kenosha, and he was able to get him. But they treated us wrong.
Not only attack the baby, they then turn around and take the baby away from its mom and dad after they pepper sprayed it, bang its head, take it away from its mom and dad, scared to death, and make them go with their godfather because the baby couldn't even be with the regular people the baby's used to, which is his grandma and grandmas or whatever, because they're in another state. So to add insult to injury, they now take the baby away from the family as well. So it's just compiling and compiling. Imagine this happened to you and your child. That's all I can say.
What answer are you guys getting from the KPD? Are you guys getting anywhere with them or no?
Nothing. Silence. Silence.
Silence.
Good. Okay.
Silence.
What's the relationship like? Are you trying, or are they trying to work with you all, or is it
under investigation? That's the quote word for we want this to blow over.
And how does that answer feel for the family?
That answer's horrible. I mean,
Insulting.
it's insulting. They're sitting here waiting for justice, waiting for answers. And as the old saying goes, justice delayed is justice denied. Those officers couldn't wait 10 seconds, but they now are 30 days out, and they can't take action against these officers. Do you think they've seen all the video? Do you think they've seen that an officer pepper sprayed a baby? Do you think they know there's a violation? Why is action not already been taken? There is no more to look at as it relates to this baby. I don't care what else happened. You should be taking action on that issue now.
Weird question. Can we just get the spelling of mom and dad's first and last name and baby's name? Whoever wants to spell it.
Shania, S-H-A-N-Y-A, last name B-O-Y-D.
And then dad's name?
Jamel English. Jermella English. ENGLISH.
Alright. And then the baby's name?
Zakoris.
With babies, we don't do the last name. Taurus. It's T Aquarius. Is the easiest way to spell it.
And he's one?
Yes.
So it's Aquarius with a T at the start.
Yeah.
T.
And
T-A.
last name?
I'm not going to. I don't.
Apostrophe?
Minor. I generally do not give out last names.
Is there an apostrophe?
No.